always say, how can you tell the difference between a native-born African, an African American, and an African in the Caribbean? You can't. The only time you can is when they start talking. So listen to this. I want to read y'all this. Because of the Europe provided and stable market for sugar cultivation and crops of the Americas became extremely profitable, the sugar plantations employed slaves. Labor spread to the Portuguese rule of Brazil in the Caribbean and West Indies, later cultivating tobacco, rice, indigo, and the British America added demands of African slaves. By 1510, Spain had joined in the Portuguese and larger transatlantic slave trade to a new, harsher slavery appeared in the Americas. Unlike the slavery in Africa, Asia, and Europe, slavery in the Americas was based on race. Most of the enslaved males were generally employed for agriculture, laborers, and soldiers, domestic servants. They enslaved also became chattel, meaning the personal property of the masters. They lost their customary human being, and men and boys predominantly, in part because the Europeans believed that they were stronger laborers than the women. Other African factors in West Africa preferred to have women to do agriculture work and therefore intended to withhold them from the transatlantic slave trade. Portugal and Spain demanded the Atlantic slave trade during the 1600s. Portugal and Spain dominated the transatlantic slave trade in the 16th century. They shipped about 2,000 Africans per year to the American colonies, with by far most going to Brazil. From the beginning of the slave trade in the 19th century, the abolitionists, about 6.5 million, approximately 11 million Africans was taken to the Americas, went to Brazil, Spain, and the Spanish colonies. Both of these molecular granite metropolities over the trade, private companies in Spain monopolized and became known in the 1518 Ancito, meaning the contract. The proof is from the slave trade were great. By then, in the 1550s, the Dutch and the French and the English became involved during the early 17th century. The Dutch drove the Portuguese from the West Africa coast to become the principal European slave traders of that century. The Africans became to Americas in Dutch ships, including a group of in the 1619 who until recently was considered to have been the first race reached British shores of North America. Okay, the Dutch also shifted the sugar production to the West Indies. England, France followed, with former taking control of the Barbados and Jamaica, latter then Santo Domingue, Haiti, Galapagos, and Maritinka. With the development of tobacco cash crops in Virginia in the 1620s, Virginia, Maryland in 1620, continued the expansion of production of the West Indies demanded African slave trade grew, and the results of England, France competed to the Dutch control of the transatlantic slave trade. After the series of war, England emerged supreme. It had driven out the Dutch in the trade in 1674. Victories over the French in Spain in 1713, English controlled Asinito, which allowed English traders to exclusively supply slaves to Spain and American colonies. After 1713, the English ships demanded the slave trade to carry about 20,000 slaves from Africa to the Americas at its peak of in 1790 to transport it 50,000 per year. So we talk about the Middle Passage. So damn near every country in Europe participated in the transatlantic slave trade. And you see the products that they were producing were being produced by Africans. The Africans got out there and picked that cotton. The Africans got out there and cut that sugar cane, and they was used as laborers and soldiers. You see what I'm saying? So, and tomorrow too, we're gonna get into that the Confederate War or whatnot. The in America, whatnot. But anyway, I want to stay on topic here. So you got who is that? The French and the English transporting. Hold on, let's get it. The British North American. The British every year was 500,000 slaves every year. Spanish America 250 million. I mean 2 million, 2.5 million. British Caribbeans 2 million. French Caribbeans 500,000. Dutch Caribbean 500,000. French Caribbean 1.6 million. Danish Caribbean 28,000. Brazil 4 million. Old World Spain 200,000. So if you just do the numbers on that, man, between 1451 and 1870, man, you got, look at that. Hold on, let's do that. 2 million, 4 million, 5.5 million, 6 million, 10 million. Boom. So that's the 12 million that originally was took in 1451 and 1870. You see what I'm saying? Now listen to this. But you see, the early slave trade, 1500s. You see, with the Dutch and this, that, and the third. And see, they was taking 2,000 per year. So if you just add them in, not even counting the Arab slave trade. We ain't even counting the Arab slave trade. So you talk about it's over 100 million Africans in Brazil. You got 40 million here in America, North America. You got another 100 million scattered out through South America. 100 million in Brazil. Then you got probably, Jamaica got 2.7 million blacks. Other countries maybe similar. So you talk about, man, between just the blacks and the diaspora, you talk about almost, a billion people, a little over a billion people. And that's not counting blacks, the Africans in Asia. That's not counting them. They're just counting North, South America, and the Caribbean islands. You got damn near a billion. You got a billion people just right there, man. You see what I'm today? You see what I'm saying? But the Middle Passes, all those people stolen, right? That's why I started out on this video. I said, how can you tell the difference between an African, born native African, an African American, South or Central, or the Africans in the Caribbean? You can't. The only way you can tell is when we start to speak. That proves we the same people from one origin.